Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello, my dear learner. I am Dr. Tanveer from Institute of Advanced Studies in Education, Jamia Millia, Islamia. For this session, our topic is Adolescence, a period of developing independence and identity. Adolescence is a unique time, but what first comes to your mind when you think of adolescence? Is it acne or awkwardness? Maybe you think of the physical changes that are taking place as the body matures into adult form. Do raging hormones come to your mind? Actually, it is the stage between childhood and adulthood. It is a time when many teenagers are trying to figure out who they are and what they are about. It is the time when they feel they should be given more responsibility than kids, but a time when they do not yet feel ready for the duties of being an adult. With activities, school, home life, and plan for their future, adolescence can be a turbulent but exciting time for teens to learn about themselves. Let's explore this stage of life in this session. I welcome you all in this interesting journey. After completing this lesson, you should be prepared to describe adolescence as a stage of life, summarize the physical changes that occur for boys and girls during adolescence, explain the two types of physical changes and how they affect boys and girls differently, define adolescence, sexual development and puberty, summarize the social and emotional changes that occur for boys and girls during adolescence, identify the changes in self-concept of a teenager, details the 4 stages of identity status, describe how identity can be influenced by outside people and groups. Number 4 is summarize the cognitive changes that occur for boys and girls during adolescence. Understand that changes occur in the brain during adolescence that cause IQ scores to fluctuate. Explain how developing frontal lobes affect behavior during adolescence. Define myelination and recall how this process shapes the frontal lobe during adolescence. Recognize why stimulating creativity at this time should be maximized and list some ways to achieve this. How adolescents develop a sense of identity and explain the challenges and issues in adolescence. Adolescence means to emerge, to achieve identity. The term adolescence came from Latin word adolescere, that means to grow or to grow to maturity. Maturing involves not only physical but also mental growth. It is a period which fills the gap between childhood and adulthood. Generally, this period is termed as youth. In India, adolescence is a phase that is more difficult to define, particularly in terms of age. Actually, it is the stage between childhood and adulthood. It is not about age, but a stage in life. It is the period within the lifespan when most of a person's biological, cognitive, psychological, and social characteristics are changing from what it is typically considered childlike to what it is considered adult-like. So, adolescence can be described as a phase of life beginning in biology and ending in society. The hopes, challenges, fears, and successes of adolescents have been romanticized, dramatized in novel and short stories and news articles. Maybe you have came through many of them. The term adolescence actually carry different meaning when we talk it in different perspectives. Chronologically, adolescence ranges from age of 12 to 18 years. When we talk this term or when we use this term in legal perspective, then it means a person who is of age between 12 to 18 years and would be termed as minor or juvenile, who also mean to say that he has not attained his maturity. In democratic politics, adolescence ends with the assumption of adult responsibility of voting, that is, choosing your own government. Sociologically speaking, it is a period which fills the gap between dependent childhoods to self-sufficient adulthood. In addition, they are generally termed as youth and characterized by hot-blooded in nature. Talking socially, it ends with marriage. When we take this term in medicines, so medically, adolescence begins with the growth and a hormonal change associated with sexual maturity and ends when there is no further growth. The adolescent period between puberty and the completion of physical growth is roughly from 11 to 19 years of age. The period of adolescent development is between the onset of puberty and adulthood. The period is generally marked by the appearance of secondary sexual characteristics, usually from 11 to 13 years of age, and spans the teen years. In educational perspectives, adolescent is the time spent in high school or early colleges. Adolescent means a person or a child who may be in secondary or senior secondary stage or may be in early years of his college or university. In psychology, adolescence is a period of transition during which cognitive, physical, personality and social changes occur. In India, due to financial reasons, the adolescent is dependent on his parent for many more years than in Western countries. The emotional dependence is also as great, producing what a term called delayed adolescence. Adolescence is between 12 to 20 years. A delayed adolescent goes until 21 years or even up to 25 years of age. The classic age-wise grouping for adolescence is between 11 to 18 years for girls and between 12 to 18 years for boys. This period is a time of change. This change comes with many new emotional and physical development as well as being a time when hormones fluctuate and puberty take hold of our bodies. During adolescence, the child continues to grow physically, cognitively and emotionally, changing from a child into an adult. The body grows rapidly in size and the sexual and reproductive organ become fully functional. At the same time, as adolescents develop more advanced pattern of reasoning and a stronger sense of self, they seek to forge their own identity, developing important attachment with people other than their parent. This period can be stressful for many children as it involves new emotions, the need to develop new social relationships, and an increased sense of responsibility and independence. Let's see it one by one. Whatever you think when adolescent sexual development comes to your mind, chances are you cringes at your memories. For most of us, this was an awkward time in our life. These changes may be an uncomfortable topic to discuss, but they are an inevitable part of growing up. Adolescent sexual development occurs during puberty and includes many physical, emotional, and social changes. Before we discuss these changes, let's first define exactly what puberty is. Puberty refers to the transformation that occur as a child undergoes physical developmental changes, resulting in a sexually mature body of adult. But what triggered this process? You may have studied it in high school biology lessons. The biological process of puberty begins when the brain's hypothalamus and the pituitary gland get together to release gonadotropins. Gonadotropins are a special hormone that activate the sexual glands. These sexual glands are the testes in boys and ovaries in girls. Once these sexual glands are activated, they begin to release their own hormone and result in physical changes throughout the body. The hormones released by the male testes are androgens, and hormones released by female ovaries are estrogens. Developmentally, normal girls may experience puberty at any time between the age of 8 to 15. For developmentally normal boys, puberty may occur at any time between age of 9 to 17. Variations in puberty-related changes are very normal. Each child is unique and they will experience these changes at different ages and at different rates. Two types of physical changes occur during puberty: changes to the primary sex characteristics and changes to the secondary sex characteristics. Primary sex characteristics refer to the sexual organs. In boys, these involve an increase in the size of prostate gland, testes, seminal vesicles, and penises. Primary sex characteristics changes in girl involve the uterus and vagina. The uterus begins to build a lining and the vagina starts to produce discharge. The most noticeable change that occurs for young women is their first menstrual period. Secondary sex characteristics refer to other visible changes that mark adult maturation. These include body hair growth, developing body odor, and a sudden rise in height. Also, changes to body shape or voice may occur. The first noticeable change in appearance will be a quick growth spurt. This sudden increase in height may cause them to feel awkward and uncoordinated as they are adapting to their new bodies, but in reality, they are increasing in strength and coordination at this time as well. Boys will begin to develop facial hairs. They will both begin to develop pubic hair and underarm hair. Body odor also begin to increase. They begin to show an interest in new grooming habits. Shaving and applying deodorant will become a new part of their routine. Boys will experience changes to their voice. Their voice begins to deepen as their voice box or larynx grows larger. During this time, their voice may crack while they are talking. At this time, girls will also experience a significant change in their body shape. Their hip will widen and their breast will begin to develop. Changes to primary and secondary sex characteristics can be strange and embarrassing to both the girls and boys when they begin. Because of this, it's important that they have enough information to understand the changes that their bodies are going through. Now let's discuss social development of adolescence. The physical changes of puberty can cause some social and emotional changes as well. Remember the release of gonadotropins, androgens and estrogens as we mentioned earlier. They are so-called raging hormones experienced during puberty. Our bodies are adjusting to this fluctuating hormone level at that time. Mood swings can occur while their bodies are getting used to these new chemical reactions, and emotions may alternate from sad to irritable, to happy to angry, for little or no apparent reason at all. These are the result of chemical changes actually happening in your body. The physical and emotional changes that are faced during puberty also result in new and unfamiliar social experiences. For example, the adolescent may start to be treated differently as their body changes are noticed by others. Or they may start to notice that others are paying more attention to how they look. They may also begin to show romantic interest in others. Learning how to navigate these new social situations can be confusing. A part of the rapid changes happening in teenager is the development of their self-concept. Self-concept refer to the set of abilities, opinions, thoughts by which we define and categorize ourselves. For adolescents, their self-concepts begin much more complex and tangible than it was when they were children. Not surprisingly, adolescents are able to describe and define themselves with more complexity than they would as they would be children. Let's understand this with an example. Suppose you ask a child, "How are you?" She may reply, "I am fine, I am nice." But if the same question is asked to an adolescent girl, she may reply, "I am nice, but could be nicer sometimes." A child may not realize how she can be nice and not nice at the same time, but an adolescent can realize this. Adolescents are also much more focused on the way they are viewed by others, which can affect their self-esteem and self-concept. A teen may point to their values and morals as a part of who they are. They may talk about careers or goals, colleges they want to attend, universities they want to attend, courses they want to pursue, awards they have received, or activities in which they excel. Other teens may point out that they do not know yet who they are, or that they are still getting to know themselves. Teens are much more focused on what is expected of them and how they compare to others than they were children. In this series, after some time, you will learn about Erikson's stage of identity development. So I am leaving it here right now. Psychologist James Marcia focused on teen identity development and expanded on Erikson's concept of identity crisis and identity diffusion during adolescence. He explained that teens go through 4 unique stages in their quest toward forming an identity and called each stage an identity status. Each status describes where an adolescent is in the process of exploring values, beliefs, and goals that will make up their self-concept. Now, let's suppose we have a group of 4 girls who are high school seniors and close friends, but each hold a different identity status. With this example, I will try to summarize Marcia's study. Let's assume the first one, a teen going through identity diffusion. This means she has not explored any particular path or chosen to follow it. Her parents are putting pressure on her to go to college, but she is not sure what she thinks about continuing school. She doesn't know what she wants to do with her future, and she is not interested in giving it much consideration also. Her friend, the second one, however, is in identity foreclosure. This means she has not explored what it does she wants, but has committed to what is presented to her. Her parents want her to opt medical studies, so she is set on doing it. The third friend in the group is in the identity moratorium status, which means she has explored a great deal but has not made any commitment. She has looked into many courses, many colleges, many universities, considered what she wants to do for a career. However, she has not settled on any course of action for herself. Lastly, we have our fourth friend who is in identity achievement. So, she has explored options and chosen to commit. She has already applied to a chosen course after investigating many possible options. She has also decided what she wants in her life. Studies Assessing how teens pass through Marcia's stages show that although most teens are eventually succeed in developing a stable identity, the path to it is not always easy and there are many routes that can be taken. Some teens may simply adopt the belief of their parent or the first role that is offered to them, perhaps at the expense of searching for others, more promising possibilities. Other teens may spend years trying on different possible identities before finally choosing one. To help them work through the process of developing an identity, teenagers may well try out different identities in different social situations. They may maintain one identity at home and a different type of persona when they are with their peer groups. Eventually, most teenagers do integrate the different possibilities into a single self-concept and a comfortable sense of identity, that is, attain their identity achievement status. Psychologist James Marcia believed that each status was ideally a stepping stone to the final one, that is, identity achievement. He believed that a mature and healthy adolescent was one who could determine his or her own identity. This includes being willing to wrestle with beliefs, goals, and other concepts with which they are raised and start figuring out their own perspectives. Influences on identity. As psychologist James Marcia pointed out, identity is influenced by specific values, beliefs, and life goals. It is also affected by an adolescent's self-esteem. The way adolescents' parents treat them also impact their confidence in themselves. If they are present, available, and loving, this can positively impact an adolescent's sense of identity. Supportive friends are especially important to adolescents for their sense of self-esteem and belonging, particularly when family life is challenging. Other factors that can influence identity are an adolescent's background and opportunities that have been offered to them, such as trips or special activities or academic activities in conducive environment he has participated or she has participated. Their identity can also spring from groups they are a part of, like a youth group or a cricket team he is a part of. Many adolescents feel as if they have one identity at home and one at school, or they might try out certain identity like trying to fit in with our artistic crowd at the school. Cognitive development in adolescence. You know that emotional and physical changes take place during adolescence. We have already discussed it in great length. But what about the brain development? What about the intellectual changes that happens during adolescence period of a person? Although the most rapid cognitive changes occurring during childhood period, the brain continue to develop through adolescence and even into the 20s. During adolescence, the brain continues to form new neural connections, but also cast off unused neuron and connections. As teenagers mature, the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for reasoning, planning, and problem solving, also continue to develop. And myelin, the fatty tissue that form around axon and neurons and help speedy transmissions between different regions of the brain, also continue to grow. The new cognitive abilities that are attained during adolescence may also give rise to new feelings of egocentrism, in which adolescents believe that they can do anything and they know better than anyone else, including their parent. Teenagers are likely to be highly self-conscious, often creating an imaginary audience in which they feel that everyone is constantly watching them. Because teens think so much about themselves, they mistakenly believe that others must be thinking about them too. But in reality, maybe no one is thinking about them. It is no wonder that everything a teen's parents do suddenly feel embarrassing to them when they are in public. Let's talk about the behavior of IQ during this and find out why it is important to encourage creativity in adolescence stage. Let's start with intelligence. It is found in different studies that the IQ score fluctuates during adolescence. This fluctuation makes true IQ difficult to pinpoint at this period of development. This is fluctuation. But is this fluctuation due to the social behavior or biology? While social behavior may play a very small role, but biology is definitely involved here. Recent advances in brain imaging and research has shown that the teenage brain is different than the brain at other period of our life. Lots of changes are taking place in the adolescent brain. These changes result in behavior that can weaken the attention span, cause poor impulse control, and result in lack of ability to evaluate reward and appreciate long-term goals. These behaviors are all controlled by the frontal lobe of the brain, which is still developing during adolescence. Researchers are trying to find out exactly why, but it is likely that this brain development plays a role in the fluctuating IQ scores that occur during adolescence. Have you ever wondered if any intellectual change takes place during puberty as well? Interestingly enough, there is evidence that intellectual changes do take place at this time. By intellectual changes, I am referring to the change in IQ and creativity both. Let's look at what we know about these changes. Now let's consider the effect that this has on creativity during adolescence. Prior to adolescence, other areas of the brain have gone through the process of myelination. Myelination is the process of white matter or myelin covering the nerve cell of brain. Myelination creates permanent pathway of communication between the brain cells that are being actively used. Through this process, the frontal lobe of the brain is being molded based on how it is used on a daily basis during adolescence. Since we are forming the thought process that we'll use throughout our life, it is important to foster creativity during adolescence. If this does not occur, the capacity of creative thinking will diminish. On the other hand, if creative thinking is nourished during adolescence, it can be applied to the rational and productive thinking that is developing during this period. So how can creativity be nourished during adolescence? Through the planned intervention at this time, creative potential can be maximized. The intervention can be in the form of educational activities that encourage original thinking, providing opportunities for the expression of novel ideas, or encouraging artistic pursuit in music, drama, or any other field. Challenges and issues of adolescence. Adolescence is full of challenges for any individual. The change is fast everywhere and hard to keep up with. The body changes in response to increasing level of sex hormones. The thinking process changes as the child is able to think more broadly and in an abstract way. The social life changes as new people and peers come into scope. Yet the child needs to deal with every single of these changes all at the same time. Adolescent often seems to act impulsively rather than thoughtfully. And this may be in part because the developmental of the prefrontal cortex is, in general, slower than the development of the emotional part of the brain, including the limbic system. Furthermore, the hormonal surge that is associated with puberty, which primarily influences its emotional responses, may create strong emotions and lead to impulsive behavior. This has been hypothesized that adolescents may engage in risky behaviors such as smoking, drug use, dangerous driving, and unprotected sex, in part because they have not yet fully acquired the mental ability to curb impulsive behavior or to make an entirely rational judgment. So, how can parents help at this time? Recognizing the complex and sometimes conflicting need of an adolescent would be a good point to start. With their willingness to help, that is where the parents come in, who have been there with the life experiences, maturity, and resources. Adolescents yearn to belong to a peer group which would define and support their identity. They may attempt to do things very much out of their character just to gain the approval and acceptance of their peers. They tend to hide their weaknesses and exaggerate their strength. Of course, what adolescents consider as weaknesses or strength may sometimes shock their parent. It's important for the parent to be in line with the youngsters. Listen to the difficulties and do not trivialize or minimize the problem, but understand the problem entirely from the point of view of the youngster. At the same time, parent could also not allow the youngster to exaggerate an issue. They should provide the youngster cues for reality testing in a gentle way. The main issue is for the parent to make up their mind regarding addressing the sexual issues rather than to avoid it. They have to set up a time with their child to talk about sexuality rather than making a few comments about it when the issue is hot. There is no point talking about the issue when it is raw and right after the incident, when everybody feels quite emotional about what just has happened to them. Let's summarize today's session. The changes of puberty are an inevitable part of growing up. Puberty refers to the transformation that occurs as child undergo physical developmental changes resulting in sexually mature body of an adult. Adolescent sexual development occur during puberty and include many physical, emotional, and social changes. Developmentally normal girl may experience puberty at any time between the age of 8 to 15. For developmentally normal boys, puberty may occur at any time between the age of 9 to 17 years old. Now, the second point which we discussed in this session is two types of physical changes occur during puberty. These are changes to primary sex characteristics or the sexual organ. There are changes to secondary sex characteristics or the visual changes that mark adult maturation. The physical changes of puberty can cause social and emotional change as well. To review, adolescents have developed a more complex self-concept since childhood. They consider different aspects of their personality, abilities, and activity to describe themselves. They are also investigating who they are and may try to the different identities. We have also discussed that according to psychologist James Marcia, they fall somewhere within four identity status on the way to forming an identity of solid values and beliefs. These include identity diffusion, identity foreclosure, identity moratorium, and identity achievement. Along with values, there are other factors that develop and impact identity like self-esteem, background, opportunities, and groups. We have discussed in length in this session about intellectual changes that are taking place along with the physical and emotional changes during adolescence. IQ score can fluctuate between the ages of 10 and 18 even though they are consistent at other ages. The frontal lobe of the brain is developing rapidly during adolescence, and this may be part of the reason for these changes. It is important to foster creativity in adolescence while this brain development is taking place. If creativity is not encouraged, the capacity for creative thinking will diminish. However, creative potential can be maximized if it is nourished at this time. For the adolescent, this period is a dramatic challenge, one requiring adjustment to change in the self, in the family, or in the peer group. Understandably then, for both the youngsters and their parent, adolescence is a time of excitement and of anxiety, a happiness and a lot of troubles, of discovery and of bewilderment, and of breaks with the past and of the link with future. Adolescent can be confusing time. For the adolescent experiencing this phase of life, for the parent who are nurturing the adolescent during his or her progression through this period, and for other adults charged with enhancing the development of youth during this period. After completing this lesson, Now there is a time for exercise and some critical thinking. Think about your experience in high school. What sort of clique or crowd were there? How did people express their identity in these groups? How did you use your group to define yourself and develop your own identity? You may reflect back to your own life and write your reflections. Thank you very much to be a part of this session. Thank you.